Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we're going to do a standalone today, a one and done. It is by Serenity Woods, and the name of the book is called Talking Dirty with the Billionaire Boss. This book takes place in Grafton, New Zealand, which is like right outside of Auckland, New Zealand, this is a first. I don't remember ever reviewing anything where the setting was so far away from the US. So this was super cool to read. We meet Sydney, who for the past 4 months has been working for Shine Professional Cleaning Services, and we find out that she got this job with a purpose. She's been hired to do a little spying. Tonight she's covering for one of her coworkers named Pippa, I think is her name. And she figures this is probably a good time to try and get some good information. And so she goes up and she actually winds up seeing the CEO of the company, whose name is Mac Hart. And she, of course, is enthralled with him. He's extremely attractive, very tall. He's walking super fast with his dog. She notices that. He's with a couple other people. She notices they have their laptops. She's given instructions from Dodie, who's like her boss, of where to go. So she tells her to go clean Mr. Hart's office. And so she does, and she's looking around. She's trying to find things that I guess could be of some type of interest to whoever sent her here to get some information on this company, which the company is called Koru Technology. So she gets pictures of some stuff in the trash. Everything is mostly locked. So she does, she goes through the trash and just takes pictures of whatever she can. It looks like there's a scribbling on something. She takes a picture of that as well. She gets as much as she can, and then she sends it to whoever it is that wants this information. She feels awful because she does feel like she's just invaded someone's privacy, but according to her, she had to do it. We switch to the POV of Mac Hart. I love when books do this. So Mac is coming in the next day with his dog Gus, who goes with him pretty much everywhere. He's friendly with all of his staff. He comes in like an hour and a half before the day is actually supposed to start because he likes having this space to himself. His office is like his favorite place, is like his sanctuary. So he gets some things done. His assistant Nadine comes in. She's in her 40s. She's married. I think he's 27 is how old Mac is. So he's super successful and for being so young. Like, wow. Nadine talks about how I guess the previous evening she had gone to the theater, and it was with Kim, which is a friend of hers who's dating this new guy who's in finance, and she's happy for her friend because she's like, even though money's not everything, it is important. You can't act like it's not. Because apparently both of them don't come from money, Nadine nor Mac does. So we kind of know he's self-made. Nadine leaves, and then Gus finds some piece of paper in the corner. And so he gets the paper from Gus, and this is what the paper reads. It says, "Obsession. I touch myself as I think of you. The nape of your neck, your clean-shaven jaw, your lips claiming mine the way you like to do, demanding, taking, sugar sweet. Your tongue sliding against mine in its beautiful dance. Your hand stroking my skin, cupping my breast, your hot mouth on my nipples, sucking, fingers plucking. My fingers slide through my swollen folds. I'm so wet for you, baby. Aching for that feeling when you enter me. I want you inside me now. Stretch me, fill me up to the brim. Ride me hard and fast. Oh God, I'm coming and it's all for you." He about loses it when he reads that. He right away knows it's not Nadine's handwriting. So Nadine is like, well, Dottie was here last night. I can call her. So he calls her. She calls her, I'm sorry, and patches her through to Mac. And he's like, basically, who was in here, like, in my office? And she tells him, it's a woman named Sydney. And she was filling in for, the normal person that cleans his office, which is Pippa. And so he says, well, she left something, and I like to return it to her in person. So she's like, well, she has another job. She's a copywriter. So let me find out when she can meet you. So she calls Sydney and then calls him back. She can meet him at the office at about 1 o'clock. And he's like, okay, that works. 1 o'clock rolls around and she comes into his office, well, the conference room, and she is sheet white. She is terrified because she thinks she's been caught, and that's why he's calling her. And he's looking at her a little strange, like, why is she looking so pale? He tells her, you left something, and she, of course, is like, what did I leave? And he tells her about the poem, and she's looking at him kind of weird, and then he shows it to her, and she says, oh my gosh. She goes, this time she turns a little red with embarrassment because he's read her poetry. And he let her know that he did like it. And it was a relief, of course, that flooded through her. They kind of flirted a little bit back and forth. As they keep talking, they find themselves being, kind of open with one another. We find out that his father is Maori and that Mac was born in Scotland, but he moved to New Zealand when he was about 12 years old. And he talks of how he used to be a barista, he was a waiter, you know, showing that, he doesn't come for money. She talks about how, she's a copywriter. She works for a company called Lubricants. And she goes into some more detail about the fact that when her friends initially, like a long time ago, had found her writing, she felt, well, let me say it correctly. She shared it with one of her friends when she was younger, and then they started sharing it with different people, and then everyone pretty much was like, oh my gosh, you're just writing porn. And he understood, and she reveals to him that she also has a YouTube channel that's dedicated to how to talk sexy, like dirty talk. And there's 3 levels, and it's literally called Talking Dirty. And he is so intrigued by this. It's really popular. She says her videos have like over 1 million views. So it's doing pretty good. And she's also halfway through writing a book. And she admits that, she loves her romance novels. She loves the dirty novels. They're great. And again, there's no judgment by him. He's intrigued by it. And he winds up asking her if she's busy that evening. And she's like, no, why? And he asked her also, before that, he had asked her, like, does she have a boyfriend? She had asked him, are you married? So they pretty much were trying to figure out, like, does the other person have someone? Well, then he invites her to come to Huxley's, which is a private club. She says to him, like, hey, listen, just because I write like this, and I might not be a virgin, but I'm not that experienced. Like, pretty much don't have that type of expectancy with me, And he's like, that's not why I asked you. He told her he was going to check out her channel as well. And then eventually she agreed to go. They exchanged numbers. And she scurries on out of there. She feels awful because she wasn't honest with him about the real reason of why she was in his office and why she took this job as being a cleaner. And then she gets a call from someone named Socrates. Now, she knows this isn't the person's real name, but that's what pops up on her phone. And they are like, why did he call you to his office? And she says, he wanted to give me something that I left there. And the person's like, well, what did you leave? And she's like, it's something private. And the person's like, well, why didn't he just send it over by cab? And she's like, I don't know. And he says, what else happened? And she admits that she was invited to this event at the Huxleys. And he says, great. He's like, he normally stays the night there. He'll probably have a suite or something, and he'll have his briefcase with him. You get as much information as you can. She, of course, is like, I don't want to do it, you know? And he's like, well, you have to do it. He's like, you know what's at risk if you don't. But he lets her know, like, you better get it done, you know? He's like, once you do it, you'll get the money, and then everything will be over with. The person then threatens her and tells her if she doesn't do it, then they're going to tell him the real reason that she was in his office. And she feels awful because they get along so well, and it's like it's over before it could ever really even begin. Sid goes home. She lives with her two friends, Caroline, she goes by Caro, and Hannah. So Hannah and Caro are lovers. They go together. And they all live together. So they've lived together for a long time. Like they met, I want to say, she's known Caro since she was a teenager, and they met Hannah at university. And so they've always lived together. And then when they, graduated, they just got a little house together, and it works out because, financially, both sides needs it. So she comes home, and they're thinking like, okay, we're going to have pizza night, wine, laid back, have a good time. And she's like, can't, got a date. They were like, what? A date? They want the details. So she tells them about Mac Hart. Of course, they Googled him, and they're floored. They're like, oh my gosh, she's hot. So they're helping her get ready, and while she's getting ready, they're having this text message exchange. This book is a really great read, and it's not a long book either. It's probably like 200 and like 280, not long at all. And it's a great, you should read it so you could like read their text exchanges, because they're so cute and they're so funny. So they're going back and forth, and he wants her to wear her hair down. So she has, think of the movie Disney's Brave, and she had red hair that was very untamed. Well, she has the same kind of hair Sid does, but it's blonde. And he wants her to wear her hair untamed. He loves her hair. And she's like, okay, you asked for it. So he pulls up in his Aston Martin, and he has a driver. He meets the roommates, and then they leave. She has all these different emotions. She's happy, she's excited, and sadness, because she doesn't know how this night is going to go. So she gets in the car. They have a little conversation, and we find out that Huxley is actually owned by one of his good friends named Oliver Huxley. And another friend of his, Victoria, runs the place. Everyone is shocked that he brought someone because she's striking. And we meet Victoria. We find out Victoria, Mac, and Oliver have all been friends since they went to boys' school. So then we find out Victoria is transgender. So then some other people come up. They introduce themselves. They have a drink. And then his ex-girlfriend Felicity comes up, and a guy named David. And they say his last name. I just don't remember what they said. They make the little introductions. She says her name is Sydney, but she doesn't give her last name. And she's like, kind of like Madonna. And then David goes, or like Socrates. So I'm like, he's got to be Socrates. He's got to be the one sending this stuff. We get a little backdrop about Mac and David. So David had come to Mac for a job, and Mac didn't get a good vibe from him, and so he decided not to go with him. And he sent a letter saying, basically you're not going to be hired. Well, the guy demanded to like speak with Mac, talked horribly to Nadine, and he's just never forgiven that guy for it. So then another one of their friends named Titus, he comes up, and they're going to do a little meeting in another room, and he's like, kind of worried to leave her alone, and she's like, it's okay, like I'm fine, like go, I'll be cool. And so he's like, okay. So he goes to this meeting, and she was talking before he left. She was talking about the fact, she said something about it being his birthday. So he doesn't like to celebrate his birthday. Mac doesn't. When she was snooping around, she had seen a card from someone named Iona. Um, hadn't even been opened, but she opened it because she was like, well, it's in the trash. So she opened it anyway, and she saw that it was like a birthday card. But then she's trying to figure out, well, who is Iona? Is this like an ex-girlfriend, a ex-wife? Like, who is this? So that's how she knows it's his birthday. And when she says it, he, of course, is kind of like, damn it, why did you say that? But then the other people are shocked because they know he doesn't like to celebrate his birthday and he doesn't talk about it. So it's kind of like, damn, she knows. Because he did say something to her about it, I think, when they were having their back and forth in the conference room. So everyone's a little shocked about that. As more folks are like coming around, he kind of feels like, he wish he would have just taken her somewhere else to just have a drink. So he just could have kept her all to himself. And also, after they had a drink, before everyone started crying around, they did have a kiss. He eventually comes back from his meeting, but by that time, girl is listening to one of her favorite bands that's performing that night. And no one's really paying attention to the band because this is more of a place about making connections, high-level execs, politicians, just high-powered people. But girl is all about the music. So she is loving it. She's dancing. She's had some drinks. So she is dancing her ass off. So when she comes back to the bar, she's thirsty. She's drinking some water. He's done with his meeting now. And he tells her, he likes how she moves. And they had texted a little before while he was in his meeting too. So then she starts dancing with him. And he's like, I don't dance. But he wound up dancing with her. They went out on the floor and they danced and they kissed again. And he told her the next time he kissed her was going to be slower. And it was going to make her dizzy. And she's like, oh my gosh, this man. And I forgot to mention, while they were dancing, he knows the lyrics of this song as well. And he sings in her ear, I want to move inside you. And he asks her to go upstairs. And she's like, okay. So they go upstairs to the room. They start kissing. Very erotic. Great scene to read. He eventually fingers her. He starts eating her pussy. She's about to come. She looked over and she saw that he had his laptop open, some files out. And she's like, I can't. She thought he was going to be upset, but he was just like, what's wrong? He's like, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And she's like, don't be nice to me. And he's like, okay, tell me what's going on. And she actually tells him she was sent to spy on him. And he's like, by whom? She didn't say. And then he says, so what was the plan? You were going to fuck me, and then when I fell asleep, just take pictures of my stuff? And she said, yeah. And so he tells her, I think you need to get out. And she tries to do the explain thing, and he's like, you need to get your stuff, and you need to get the fuck out. He's like, you need to do it before I call security. So she gets her stuff, and she runs out. Huxley and Victoria come in and talk to him because when Sid left, he yelled out a loud fuck really loud. So some other guests heard, and of course, they complain. He doesn't explain to them fully what happened. He will not tell them everything that transpired. He did try to run after her, but Huxley was able to stop him because he's like, nothing's good going to come if you confront her the way you are right now. So he took him back to the room, and Victoria went off on him a little bit and was kind of like, even though you won't tell us what happened, you treat women like they're nothing. And you do it to a lot of women. So she kind of used this moment to, I guess, really say what she had been thinking about his behavior anyway. And she was like, whatever happened, you need to apologize for it. Huxley had brought in some brown liquor. And he's like, pretty much drink how you need to drink. So He gets drunk, but before he passed out, he jacked off, and then he passed out. He slept for a long time. And then the next day, he still wasn't fully recuperated, but he wasn't gonna drive. So he winds up jogging, and he realizes, like, I didn't even give her a chance to find out why she did it. There's got to be a reason. So he's trying to figure it out, because he's like, it can't just be to try and pay off student loan debt, because, like, everyone has that. You're not going to go to these extremes for something like that. He's like, it's got to be something else. And he realizes he should have given her the opportunity to explain. She had texted him, like, that night. She had texted him, sorry, but of course he didn't reply. So poor Sid, she's sad, she's hungover. It's a hell of a combination. The girls are out that morning, so she has the house to herself. We get a little backdrop. Her father is sick. Now, we don't know exactly what it is just yet, but he has an ailment, and that's why she agreed to do this. So then she gets a call from Socrates, and she tells him she wasn't able to get anything. She tells him she got caught. She doesn't say she confessed. And he goes, damn it, like, why couldn't you get this right, And then he says, don't worry, next time you'll do better. And she's like, there won't be a next time. She's like, I'm done. And he's like, well, if you're done, then I'm just not going to pay for someone's care without getting anything in return. And she's like, how awful that you're, like, preying on people that are in need. And she hung up the phone. She was done. Around 8ish that morning, someone's knocking on the door. And yes, it is our boy. She is, of course, shocked to see him. He, of course, tells her, we're leaving in 10 minutes. You need to go put on some, you need to get some in your system. She's looking crazy, but she goes, and she didn't argue. She went and got dressed. So they leave, and on the way there, they avoided an accident, but they saw the accident occur. He helps a woman with her kids. Over there, you don't have to have insurance. And so he called an automotive shop, because the woman, I can't talk to that. Automotive shop, because she was freaking out. She's like, oh my gosh, my husband's going to kill me. So he's going to be so pissed, this close to the holidays. And so he calls the automotive shop, and he says, don't worry about it. They're going to come and tow your vehicle and get it fixed, and probably can have it done by end of day. And she was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. He's sweet. He has a good heart, clearly. So they leave. She freaked out, because this was a lot to take in. Poor Sid. She winds up throwing up on the side of the road. Because I think, she's still drunk with the adrenaline and everything. She, of course, was also shocked that he had done this, and she had asked him, she made that comment to him, and he said, why wouldn't I help people if I could? And I'm just like, God dang it, why can't everyone have that type of attitude? What a better world we would, live in. But anyway, I digress. So they get to this vegetarian cafe, because both of them are vegetarians, and he tells her, after they're sipping their lattes, she tells him, I never thought I would see you again. And he says, I can't stop thinking about you, but you need to explain. So she starts telling the story about her dad. We find out he has prostate cancer. The insurance isn't going to cover the meds, because I guess at this point it's some experimental possible stuff that could save him, and it's close to 100 grand. The brother, Dan, is the one that I guess had met up with Socrates or linked it up some kind of way, and presented this opportunity. And the brother apparently is kind of flaky. I think he's into drugs, partying, things like that. So of course when when she tells him this, he's like, oh my gosh, like, wow. So she told him, like, we've done everything. Like, we've put up a GoFundMe. We've done, marathons. We've done all kind of stuff to try and get the money. And, it's just never been enough. So then she gets no, she didn't get a phone call. I think she looked it up and saw that the goal had been met. The full amount for the GoFundMe. He never admits that it was him because she had got up and went outside and talked to her sister, Kate, I think is her sister's name. She goes back inside and she says what happened, but again, he never admits that he's the one that just did this. So she's supposed to go and visit her dad. Um, the dad, of course, didn't want them to go through all of this trouble. He kind of was just kind of like, I'd rather just pass on. Like, I don't want to be a burden. And, but they were all, the family was like, they wanted him to, fight, try and stay. So they put everything they had into it. So that was why she had done all of this. When she talked to the dad, the other thing he had said, he had asked her, like, did you have to sleep with somebody for this money? And she was like, she really didn't, even though in her brain, she's like, hell, that's the least she could do. So the next day at work, we switch back to Mac's POV, and they're having their office Christmas party. And the office is going to be closed for a few weeks for Christmas vacation. He's going to take off a couple of days too, which isn't normal for him. But they're going to get back in there that coming Monday, like the main heads, because they're trying to get this project done for a client named Elizabeth. She's a member of the Huxley's Club too. They've known each other since college as well. So she's a part of that friend group. So then he starts texting Sydney and he's chuckling and stuff. And then Nadine comes in and she sees him and she's like, talking to her, aren't you? And he's like, yeah. She was just happy to see him happy. He gives her a hug before she leaves because she's going on a cruise for the holidays with her husband. He goes back to texting Sydney again. And this is, again, why you should read the book, because their text message exchanges they're great. They are so fun to read. They have a date that night. He goes to pick her up. They have a little conversation. And they go to this like really upscale vegetarian place. It's Italian as well. And she'd heard of it, but it's super expensive, so she'd never been. He knows the owner, and so they're able to get this nice private booth. They have some flirty conversation. We do find out that Jamie, who is his driver, is also his half brother. And there's more to that story. She can feel it, but he doesn't expand on it, and she doesn't want to push. What he does tell her is that, that he looked after him a lot when they were younger, and that because of that, Jamie feels like he owes him now. So Nadine takes care of his life in the office, and Jamie kind of takes care of his life outside. He does have a girlfriend named Emma, and they live together. They live right next door to Mac, actually, in their apartment. It's probably in a penthouse, because Mac has to have some type of penthouse. So they have their dinner, they're flirting, and she's great with words, and he loves that. That's that's how they flirt. It's so cute. And she's super excited for tonight, because tonight is supposed to go down after this dinner. So she is nervous, but yet very excited. They go to dinner, they have a nice time, they come back to his place. She meets Emma, who's Jamie's girlfriend, and then it winds up being just the two of them with Gus, the dog. Her and Gus get along great. They have some flirty conversations back and forth, and we find out he just moved there like a month ago. So that whole thought she had in her head about had other women been there, it's settled, because now she knows she's the first one. She had even made a comment about, being a one night stand and stuff like that, and he didn't negate it. And she played with him a little bit and said, she didn't think she could do this, and he was like, you don't. But he did tell her, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And then he realizes she's joking with him, and then they have this really great kiss. So he lets her know he's going to go slow with her. And they wind up having this great session. It's long, but it's great. He eats her pussy. They have a nice, slow and hard fuck. It's great. It was absolutely great. She came multiple times. He told her, he's like, I'm basically gonna keep making you come until the sun comes up. So yeah, great night. Then and then when he came, he damn near blacked out. So he looks at her, of course, afterwards, and he's just thinking like she's just the most beautiful woman in the world. So they have a great night, and I think her count was like 7 or 8 times she came. So he did his promise. They go out, and there's a garden outside. Only him and Jamie have access to it. So it's like a really beautiful garden. He winds up humming the heartbeat song that they had, you know, sang and danced to that night at Huxley's. And it was so romantic, under the moonlight, just absolutely poetic, right? And then she gets sad because she realizes, like, this is it, you know? It's not going to be anything else after this. He had already told her he can't do relationships because of his schedule, and there's just no time for it. And she's just like, okay, well, I better get going. And he's like, why can't you can stay the night, you know, Jamie can take you home in the morning. But she says, no, it's best, I'll go ahead and go home, I have work tomorrow anyway. So she goes, gets her stuff, and she's about to leave, and he tried to ask her again not to go, but she just kind of felt like it's just best to go ahead, you know, and get out now. So he was like, well, let me call you a cab. She's like, I can call an Uber. I'm good. You know, I'm a big girl. So then he asked her, you know, will you text me? Let me know you made it home okay. And she says, okay, sure. So she leaves. She gets home. She texts him. She made it home. And she goes to sleep. No more texts from him. She wakes up in the morning. The girls are there. And Caroline is the first one in there, actually. I think Hannah's still in the room. And she, of course, wants to know how the night went. But she told him about the night, you know, going to the restaurant, things like that. But she didn't go into extreme details. Like, normally she gets very detailed about her encounters. But she didn't do it. She just wanted that to be private. And I think because it meant something to her, you know what I mean? So she didn't really want to tell everything about that. So she goes, she takes a shower, she goes to work, she gets a phone call from the front desk saying, hey, there's something here for you. She goes up, she sees beautiful roses, about 2 dozen. And it's from Mac, and it's got a picture of him and Gus. It's super sweet. And she's just kind of like, you know, wow, like, oh my gosh, like, she texts him, you know, thank you for the flowers, they're beautiful. And he's like, you know, beautiful flowers for a beautiful woman. And what happened? She goes back to work. And again, there's no point in her dwelling on it, even though she's really happy he did that. But she feels like, you know what, he just probably did that to be nice, you know, that type of thing. And she gets sad, but she knows it's time to forget him. While Mac is at work, one of his co-workers, was his name Kai? I think it was Kai. And I think he's one of the kind of partners in this that helped start it. He tells him he's getting married. And Mac is shocked because I guess he has this whole thought process of marriage that, you know, it's like being in a chokehold. Because as guys, they've made jokes about it, you know. And he does tell him congratulations. Again, this is old friend, you know, they all went to university together. So they've known each other for a really long time. And the guy says to him, you know, at some point we got to grow up. And she allows me to be myself. She knows I work a lot. She accepts who I am. She's not trying to change me. And he, of course, had the thought process, you know, like, yeah, that's now. You know, wait until it's official. And she's going to start checking up on you and all that type of stuff. But he doesn't say this to him. He keeps it to himself. And the line of him saying at some point we have to grow up is stuck in his head now. So the guy asked him to be his best man, and Mac was like, are you sure, you know, not your brother? And he's like, dude, I see my brother like twice a year. I'm around you every day, you know? So he accepts, and he was glad to do it. He's going to go up to the Bay for the weekend. Is it called Bay Islands or Bay of Islands, something like that? And he'll be back on Monday to start work. And again, normally it's called Bay of Islands. That is the correct name. Normally and I looked this up because I had never heard of it. Really beautiful, gorgeous. Oh my gosh. So he normally doesn't take this kind of time off, but he is going to do it. Jamie's coming as well with his girlfriend. He was supposed to have a business meeting at Huxley's place, but for whatever reason, Huxley is closed down, and so they had to reschedule it. And so it's going to be at the same place where he had dinner with Sydney. He stumbles a little bit when Jamie tells him this. Jamie catches it, but he doesn't say anything. Um, he, of course, is now thinking about Sydney even more so. He takes out his phone and he texts her, and they have a nice little texting session. And she describes what she would like to do to him with dessert that she didn't get to have a chance to eat, the tiramisu. And it involves everything from licking his nipples to putting his dick in his mouth, in her mouth, and letting him come in her mouth. And he, of course, is blown away by this. And he's at the table, like texting her, and everyone just stopped and they're just staring, right? Someone had asked him a question. He didn't even hear it. Like, brain just gone. So then his friends are like, trying to question him about Sydney, and he's not really answering any questions. He just goes back to texting Sid. He's with his family, having a good time. Jamie brings up Sid and says that she's Mac's new girlfriend. And he's like, no, she isn't. And Jamie's like, yeah, but you're smiling all the time. You were texting her the whole way up here. Jamie tells it all. So the family's like, well, why don't you have her come up? You know? And he told them about the fact, about her dad having cancer and how, he was going to be going through treatments and stuff like that. And they're kind of just like, well, maybe she needs a break. You know what I'm saying? Like, it'd be nice for her to be able to come up, and be near the ocean. And so he winds up calling her. He leaves outside, of course, to go do it so they can have a conversation. And she says to him that, she was shocked, of course, to see him calling her. But she was, pleasantly surprised. He tells her he misses her and he invited her to come. And she at first was like, she wanted to come, but she didn't want to come. Like, she didn't want it to be like, or make him, or have him think that, she felt obligated to come because he had given all that money. And he finally admits, that he is the one that gave that donation. And she's like, thank you for finally admitting it. And so he's like, listen, I wouldn't think that, I would really like for you to come. I really miss you. And she still didn't agree because she was like, this is kind of scary. She's like, I could see myself falling for you if I haven't already, you know? And it's just going to make it that much harder when it's time to let go. And he's like, well, what if I don't want to let go? I was like, oh my gosh, look at him. And then she agrees to come. So she's like, because he's like, he's going to come and get her on a plane. She's like, you can get a ticket that fast? He's like, I have my own plane. He's like, I have a helicopter too, but we won't be able to talk if we if I bring the helicopter. So the next day he goes up there. She comes outside, but she doesn't have any of her bags. And he's like, well, you know what's going on? And she says, the family wants you to come inside. They want to thank you. He's like, there's no need for that. She's like, yeah, but they're not going to stop. So you kind of might as well come on in and just get it over with. So he comes in and he meets everyone. The father, of course, is very thankful. We get a little information that we didn't know before. So apparently his father, Max, also had prostate, but he found it too late and he died. So then they leave from there and they're headed back to his family. So they finally make it back to his family's house. Ton of people are there. It's like over 30 people. But she is having a great time. They go swimming. They're not going to stay at the house because it's not big enough for all these people. Plus, he told her we need a hotel because I need you to be able to scream. I'm like, oh my god, that is so freaking hot. So then he starts. Um, they go back to the hotel. Jamie, Emma, him and Sid, and he said something about a project that he has to work on, but he doesn't go into detail. And at first it's like she wanted to take offense, but she really couldn't. And I'm like, listen, it's already shady as hell as to why or how you met him, right? You were sent to spy. So I don't think you need to be trying to press for information. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, allow him to bring it up. If he wants to talk about it, he will elaborate. But don't be trying to push, because I'm not going to lie. I would think like, okay, wait a minute. Are you still working for Socrates? They get to the resort. Of course, it's beautiful. Um, the ocean, they can see it from their room. Emma and Jamie go to their room. And then they go to theirs, and he kisses her as soon as they get in. He was kissing her before because he was kissing her in front of everybody. Didn't matter for him. So then she's like, well, hey, can I take a shower first? I've got sand everywhere. So he's like, well, let's take a bath. He goes and takes Gus for a walk, comes back. During that time, she had called her sister to see if everything was okay. And her sister's like, everything's fine. Enjoy yourself. The sister doesn't live in New Zealand. She lives in Australia because, her husband's family, that's where they live. So, Sid has had to do a lot for the family and stuff like that. And they're just kind of like, we can hold the fort down. It's okay. Just enjoy yourself. So they run a bath. He orders some food. That man is always eating. And then they have a very intimate moment. He washed her hair, washed her body. It's very intimate. And it had her body buzzing. This was a great chapter to read because their sex scene it was awesome. They basically go from fucking in the tub, and he's like, I need you in a bed. I want to fuck you like 10 different ways. So they get out of the tub and go to the bed. So they had this crazy session. They didn't use protection. She had told him she was on the pill, but she told him if you still want to use a condom, you can. She was like, I'm clean. I haven't, I'm tested. I'm good. And he said he was good. And so they fucked raw, and he came inside her. So the next morning they go jogging. It's nice. He's super fast. He used to be a sprinter in school, and he had decided to go with either. He loves sprinting. He loves it, but computers make more money. So plus he loves computers, so he took that route. He tells her how busy he's going to be this coming week because he has that project for Elizabeth. And she's like, I know you're going to be busy. And he says, he's like, I don't want you to see anyone else. And she's okay, but that goes the same for you. You can't see anyone else either. And he's like, that's no problem. So they catch a flight back. He takes her to her parentals, um, have a kiss. He gets back to the car. He already misses her. He has Jamie take him to the office because it's time to work. He goes into Maris, which is the name of the computer, which was his first, I think, was it his first computer? I can't remember. No, it might have been. And he said to the computer, you'll always be my first love, but I think someone else, um, you know, is weaving its way in there. And then he goes back to work. The week goes by fast. He does message her different times, all kind of different hours. Just messaged her, just basically let her know he's thinking about her. He sends her pictures of how tired he looks, so there's like no doubt that he's working. She dives into her writing. She's getting a lot done. She tells him about it. He's like so excited for her. And that makes her really happy. And then he pops by that Friday. She hadn't been expecting him. He had just handed off the project to Elizabeth, and he came straight to her. And he had a bunch of gifts for everyone in the family. It was really sweet. Everything was catered to each individual. And then he came outside and he gave her her gift, which was a Mont Blanc pen, and it's in the shape of like a Jimi Hendrix guitar. It was beautiful because it was like this whole thing she had told him about her loving Jimi Hendrix and his guitar. So it was like in the shape of that Jimi Hendrix guitar. It was really, really sweet. And she just loved that he took notice. So he tells her tomorrow we're going to make up for it. He had asked her if she knew how to play tennis. She did play tennis, I think, back in high school. So he's like, all right, there's a tournament tomorrow. I'll come and pick you up. We're going to play. So they get there, and guess who one of the matches is going to be against? Felicity, the ex. He doesn't call her ex though. Like other people say ex-girlfriend, but he's like, she was never my girlfriend. He's like, we screwed around a couple times. That was it. And the David Clark guy, that's his last name. And he's like, oh, this is going to be fun. They go through all the different matches. We get to the final one. And yes, they are going up against David and Felicity. It was a tough match, but they won. The last point was Mac doing an ace. David flipped out. He's like, no, that was out. And the umpire's like, no, it was in. He's screaming. He, throws his racket on the ground, acting like a petulant child. He was awful. And he storms off the court. Felicity's looking so embarrassed. She finally leaves. And then everyone comes out and he tells her just how crazy he is about her. So they go and do the award ceremony. Of course, Felicity and David are gone because David's too pissed. They go back to Mac's apartment, and Jamie and Emma are with them, and we find out that Emma's 8 weeks pregnant and that Jamie asked her to marry him, and she said yes. They want a small ceremony. Everyone's excited. There's a bunch of hugs and kisses, and then they go upstairs. She gets a little sassy with him. He's like, okay, you're going to pay for that. He's like, I'm going to fuck you senseless. And then that's exactly what he does. She has so many orgasms. He fucked her all over the apartment. And by the time they reach the bedroom, she's like, okay, I know how to get him. So she gets on her knees and she's like, let me taste you. And he looks at her a little strangely because I think he knew what she was trying to do. And she says, please, Dr. Hart, let me taste you. And so he does. So she sucks him off and lets him come in her mouth, but he is not done yet. So he gets her again. So then they fall asleep. They wake up because it is New Year's Eve. And that night they're going to go to Huxley's. But before they go, they have a little conversation. And he winds up telling her that he thinks he's in love with her. And she's like, I think I'm in love with you too. And then he gets a phone call from Felicity. He answers it, puts it on speakerphone. And he tells her, hey, you're on speakerphone. And I'm sitting with Sid, And she's like, that's good. That's how it should be. And she's like, I'm so sorry about David today. And she says all this stuff. And she says how she broke up with him. She was so embarrassed. And then she said something to him about this award. And he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, oh, I shouldn't have said anything. And then she hangs up. So he's trying to figure out, like, how did she find out about this award? And he's just trying to put two and two together. And he's like, well, then that means Elizabeth had to have told David, who in turn told Felicity. So now he's pissed. So they take a shower, and now they're headed to Huxley's. They get to Huxley's, and Matt goes straight up to Elizabeth. And he's like, what did you do? Why did you do it? And he's talking about the award that she had put in for him. So she put in for him to win this award. And she's like, I put in for you. I nominated you because you deserve it. The work you're doing, it deserves to be shared, and I wanted you to be recognized for it. And I'm not withdrawing it. And so he's pissed, but she's not letting go. Like, she's like, no, that nomination's going to stay put. So then they start putting two and two together, and she realizes Elizabeth isn't the one that told David. Sydney told David because David is Socrates. Now, how the hell they didn't put these two and two together earlier? I did the minute he opened his mouth and said Socrates, which is why I thought she kind of was freaking out because she heard that name. Like, no one just walks around saying fucking Socrates. You know what I'm saying? So I don't see how she didn't just put that together a long time ago, but hobby ever, she didn't. So when Mac comes back, she tells him it was me. She was like, I sent him the picture of, because I sent things that were in your trash can, and I sent him the photo of it, and he wasn't pissed at her. And I think because she had come clean, she didn't go through. I mean, she did do the first thing. She did send the first pictures, but she told him before there was real damage that could have been done, right? Before any of his actual, you know, research findings was leaked to someone else, right? So that's the reason I feel like he's not as upset. Plus, he's in love with her. While Mac had walked away, Sid and Elizabeth have a conversation, and we get a little backdrop about Mac. So we find out that Mac's dad and his mom is Iona. So that's who the birthday card was from. That was in the trash. That's his mom. She had him. It was like a one night stand with the dad, but she felt hard for the dad. But he, of course, didn't feel that way about her. And so she doesn't know what happened. Elizabeth doesn't. She just knows that when Mac turned 12, he started looking for his dad, and that's all she knows, right? So of course, Sydney's brain's running, trying to figure out like what in the world happened that would have made him start looking for his dad. Elizabeth's like, I don't know, something happened when they were kids, and the mother didn't put up a fight. So she's like, you're going to have to ask him about that. We find out what he's been working on for Elizabeth. Both Elizabeth and him lost their parents to cancer. And so they're building this model that can calculate these odds to try and help. So pretty much like a cure. And didn't want to tell Sydney about it because I'm quite sure he didn't want her to get her hopes up. And she tells her, like, I'm quite sure he's probably going to ask your dad to be one of, the first people to test it out. And so she is truly amazed by this man. He really is absolutely wonderful. So then we go back to David. David comes in with his crew of people. Mac rushes over there. he knocked the shit out of David. David tried to say some slick shit. Elizabeth comes over. She fires David. She's like, I cannot believe you would do this. She's like, everyone told me not to trust you, not to hire you, and I did it anyway, and this is how you repay me. So he was fired on the spot. And Huxley also tells him you're banned from Huxley's as well. So now his membership's been terminated, and so he's fucked up all the way because, this is where the big wigs come to make business deals. So he fucked himself all the way up. All because you wanted someone else's acclaim because they didn't hire you. Pathetic. So Matt goes, sits down. He's like, how about we go back and straighten up a bit, because he's got some blood on his shirt. They get back to his apartment. They have a conversation, and she told him about the conversation that she had with Elizabeth, and so he fills her in on the rest. So because the dad left, he was just there on like a leave. I think he was with the army or something like that. And so that was just like a couple of weeks that he was in Scotland. And he was gone. So when he was born, he doesn't remember anything good with his mother. She always treated him bad. She was abusive. If he would get an award, she would tell him he didn't deserve it. She's like, you're so full of yourself. You're an evil child. She would put him in cupboards. On his birthday, she wouldn't buy him stuff. She would tell him he didn't deserve it. Like, she was absolutely awful. And so it fucked him up pretty bad. And then she had different men. She got pregnant again. This is when she had Jamie. After Jamie was finished weaning, she just like abandoned him. She would leave him crying. So Mac would like get him food and stuff like that. And then she got involved with some guy named Jock. He was abusive as well, but then it turned into sexual. And he couldn't get Mac, but he did get Jamie. And so by this time, Mac had got really good with computers, and that's when he got on Facebook. He started messaging every person with the name of his father, which I can't remember the name. Um, and the guy reaches back out, and he tells him everything that's happening. He doesn't hear from him for a couple of days, and so he's thinking, "Oh, I guess the guy, is done with me." Well, then there's a knock on the door one day. It's his dad and his grandfather, and the grandfather is still alive. That's the one that lives on the beach in the Bay of Isles. That's his grandfather. He bought that house for him. And the jock guy, of course, is like, get away. I'm not giving you the boys. And they give him $1,000 in whatever monetary form they have. And he says, he takes the money and he's like, good riddance. So the mother went in the room, closed the door, didn't say a word, never said goodbye, anything. So his family has always, Jamie's family. So he brought both the boys back. And that's why Jamie is so loyal to him, because he is like, you literally saved my life. He doesn't like being away from Mac. When Mac went off to university, it was really hard for Jamie because he likes having his brother around. And so even when he tried to pay for Jamie to go to university, he's like, no, because then I'd be away from you. So I was like, wow. So Nadine knows about the mother. That's why she threw the card away. So the mother sends him every year, but she just tosses him. He wants nothing to do with her. He said even to this day he hates her. She's awful. He says even though he thinks she has severe mental issues, at the same time she just did them so horribly. And we also find out that when he sold his first processor to Intel, his father died like right before he was able to sell it. So his father wasn't able to enjoy like the fruits of his labors, and that's hard for him. That sucks. But this also is why he doesn't like getting praise, because he says her voice is still in my head. You know, like I still hear her saying that I'm not supposed to have this, and I don't deserve it. So it's just crazy. So he winds up asking her to move in, and she's like, it's only been 2 weeks. And he's like, listen, I'm new to this. I don't know how this is supposed to go, but she agrees to move in. A few days later, he gets a call from Huxley about some type of event the next night. He needs to come. He says Victoria messed up an email invite, and he's like, could you please come? And he agrees. And so at this point, he's coming home like 7 o'clock. His late nights don't go past 10 o'clock. Like, he comes home every night, and I think it's because it everyone's different, but I think him not having anyone to come home to, like that he wanted to be around. He loves his work, so why not just stay somewhere where you love being there, right? Instead of coming home and then being to yourself. Not that you shouldn't be able to be to yourself, because listen, me myself, I love my alone time. But I think once you know that there's someone there that you love and you like and you want to be around them, it changes for him. He still loves his work. That's not going to change. He will forever, I think, be not an alcoholic. I'm so horrible, a workaholic. But I think he's figuring out a way to balance it because, he likes having this person in his life. And she didn't have to beg him to do it. She didn't have to complain. She didn't have to do any of that stuff because I believe it's a natural progression for a person to want to do it, So I thought that was really sweet. And it was wonderful because no one He didn't need someone to try and change him. He may have had some, thoughts about things, but deep down he wasn't a bad person. And I like that she just allowed him to be himself. And he really saw that when he had this project coming and she wasn't blowing his phone up. She wasn't, what are you doing and where, she wasn't doing that. She was happy that for him to have his space. And I just thought that was really, really sweet. It's the next night. He's going to the Huxley. The person tells him go to the chess room. He goes. Huge surprise. He's freaking out. He starts backing out. And he walks out. And so Jamie and Emma are coming in. And Sid's like, don't let him get in the car. And she had to calm him down because he was like a wild beast, like trying to get the heck up out of there. So Elizabeth had done something to change it. She changed it from being just him being nominated to his whole team. And so now everyone would get, the recognition for the work. And he couldn't complain about that, right? He liked that, right? It made him happy because his team did help him. So the award that they initially went for, they actually wound up getting an even better award for all their contributions to New Zealand and an additional $100,000 prize. He's a multi-billionaire. But it's just going to go back in for research. So that's nice. He was really happy, gave a little speech. He just said how thankful he was for his team and how thankful he was for Sid, in the short time he's known her, how much she's taught him. And she's just sitting there like, this man really is amazing. So then we fast forward to Valentine's Day, probably like 5 weeks later. They give each other these really cheeky, cute presents. And then he goes to the door to get a real gift. He comes back. It's a box with holes in it. And it's a puppy. It's one of the puppies that Gus and one of Elizabeth's dogs had made. And he got it for Sid because she had always wanted a dog. But because of where she lived, she wasn't able to have it. And he was happy to give it to her. But then around the neck of it, she sees something shiny. And it's an engagement ring. And it's like over 8 carats. She starts crying. Eventually, she answers him and she says yes. And he asked her, he had an idea for, he's like, what about, do you want to like write full time? He's like, I know you don't want to be a kept woman or anything like that. He's like, but, you could finish your novel, it could work, you could even have a office space with me at, where, at my building. And she's like, you know what? Yeah. And I was happy for her because listen, if I could just sit in a corner and write or just read all day, I'd do it, So I was so happy for the girl. Like, yes. So we find out that she sent her book off to the publisher. She's waiting to see how that's going to turn out. She is writing full time. And they are just super happy and ecstatic. And that's how it ends. I thought this was such a cute read. I knew, of course, I didn't think it was going to be, text messages talking to him in a certain way. I don't know. I don't know how I thought it was going to play out, but I liked how it played out with the text messages. Again, this is a really great read. To read their exchanges is kind of awesome. So I definitely recommend this. Let me know what you guys think. Drop down in the comments section and let me know. Also, if you have any ideas on any books you'd like for me to review, drop down in the comment section and give me those ideas as well. And eventually I'll get to them. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I will have those links available down in the description section below. Make sure you like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.